A little stray dog happened to notice that. Even though the newspaper boy deliberately threw papers all over the place, the man of the house never lost his temper. In that moment of tolerance and kindness, the little wanderer felt that this man could surely give him a warm home. So, when the man wasn't looking, the dog snuck into the house. He trotted up the stairs on his short little legs, climbed the stack of books piled by the bed, and curled up on a little girl's bed. The girl had always dreamed of having a puppy. She never expected her wish would actually come true.
Puppy!
Hearing the commotion, the whole family came running. They all assumed this sudden appearance of a dog was a surprise arranged by their father.
Honey, I take back almost everything I ever said about you being cold and insensitive.
Dad, I take back anything I ever said about you too. Dad, I have everything I ever wanted. I owe you big time.
The dog's arrival unexpectedly became a glue for the family. 3 kids immediately crowded together, bickering over who got to hold the puppy first. But George had a worried look on his face. Just thinking about shedding fur and the mess a dog would make in the house made him uncomfortable. His wife understood how he felt, but figuring out how to convince 3 excited children was the challenge at hand.
Dad, why can't you just give us a chance? Yeah. You're always saying that we have to have responsibility.
Looking at all those disappointed faces, George couldn't bring himself to say no. And just like that, Beethoven officially became a member of the family. And George's nightmare had only just begun. There were endless muddy paw prints on the carpet, endless dog hair on the sofa, and what drove him even crazier, Beethoven would frequently leave his scent in George's briefcase, and his shoes weren't spared either. As Beethoven grew bigger by the day, his appetite and his talent for destruction grew along with him. Every day when George came home from work, this little troublemaker would leave muddy paw prints all over him, especially on rainy days. The entire living room would be a muddy mess, and there was disgusting drool on the armrests. Just as George was about to discipline him, he found Beethoven already sprawled dirty on the bed. Furious, George locked Beethoven in a cage the next day, determined to never let him cause trouble again. But that didn't stop the clever Beethoven. He'd already dug himself a secret escape tunnel. Though he was mischievous, he loved every member of the family in his own way. Every day, he'd wait right outside the school gate on time to walk the big sister home. When he saw the little brother being bullied by 3 kids, without a second thought, Beethoven burst through the window and leaped out, baring his teeth with such a fierce look that the 3 bullies ran off in terror. The little brother thought it was all his own doing, flexing in the mirror and showing off his muscles. That confidence from facing his fear head-on meant he was never afraid of those bullies again. But George knew none of this. He ran an air freshener company, dreaming of making it big. He poured all his energy into work and courting investors, neglecting his family and missing out on his children's growth. George still couldn't stand Beethoven. Whenever he saw him in the house, he'd lock him in the cage. But as soon as George was gone, Beethoven would slip back inside through his secret tunnel. After all, the soft sofa was 100 times more comfortable than the cage. But this night, he accidentally stepped on the remote, and the TV noise woke the couple upstairs. Seeing George come down to check, Beethoven bolted. Meanwhile, Alice was tucking each child into bed. When George fumbled back to the room in the dark, he had no idea someone else had taken his place in bed.
No matter how many showers I take, I still smell Beethoven all over me. You're not mad at me, are you? Oh, baby. Oh, baby. It's not even Saturday night.
George?
Beethoven scrambled outside, but in his hurry to escape, his secret tunnel was exposed. The next day, George, at his wit's end, hauled stones over and sealed the tunnel shut. Little did he know, this move would almost cause a disaster. That day was Alice's first day back to work. After leaving her stay-at-home mom life behind, she had no choice but to leave the kids with a babysitter. Her youngest daughter was especially shy, clinging to Alice's hand and refusing to let go. The older daughter and son were a bit better, but the babysitter had already messed up the son's glasses the first time they met. Alice noticed all of it. She really didn't want to be apart from her children, but George, eager to expand the company, kept insisting she come back to help. Eventually, 2 investors agreed to the deal. Alice smiled and reached out her hand to thank them, but was completely ignored. George didn't even notice. His mind was full of the upcoming partnership, and he cheerfully invited the 2 investors to dinner at their place. Meanwhile, the careless babysitter was focused on playing piano and singing with the older 2, completely oblivious that the youngest, chasing a ball, had fallen into the swimming pool. She couldn't swim at all. Worse still, her cries for help were drowned out by the piano. No one inside had any idea of the crisis unfolding. Locked up, Beethoven paced frantically. The secret passage has been blocked. With no other option, he put all his power into breaking through the iron door, leaped into the water without hesitation, and used his broad back to carry the little girl to safety, averting a tragedy. Worried that Beethoven would get in trouble with Dad, the little girl quickly got him back into his cage. Only then did the others realize what had just happened. Because of this, the couple argued as soon as they got home. George thought it was just an accident. They'd just hire a more responsible babysitter. But Alice flatly refused. She wanted to stay home and take care of the kids herself. George was a bit frustrated. Meanwhile, Outside, Beethoven overheard the two investors talking. They were frauds. If George signed that contract today, in a few months they'd completely take over the company he'd worked so hard to build. Alice felt this was no small matter and urged George to think it over. But the two scammers, seeing she was about to ruin their scheme, quickly found ways to distract her, asking her to get water, then deliberately spilling a glass so she'd clean it up, treating her like a servant. Though Alice was seething inside, for the sake of the family business, she swallowed her pride. George, blinded by excitement, still didn't notice any of these little tricks. But just as he was about to sign, Beethoven had already quietly wrapped his leash around the table and chairs. Then he gave a mighty tug, sending the whole table, along with the two men, tumbling over. And just like that, the deal was completely ruined. That night, man and dog stared at each other from across the room. George really couldn't think of a reason to keep Beethoven anymore, but Alice firmly objected. She was proud of Beethoven, because those two had humiliated their children and treated her like a servant. Beethoven was the only one who stood up for them.
My dream's going down the drain, and you're worried about a dog.
Your family's going down the drain and you're worried about a dream.
Those words hit George like a slap to the face. He had worked so hard to give his family the best life, yet he'd been oblivious to his daughter nearly drowning, and his wife being insulted. It was the dog he'd resented who had actually protected his family. To convince their dad to let Beethoven stay, the three kids quietly took action the next morning. The brother didn't sleep in. He took over the dog walking duty himself. The sister took on the responsibility of bathing Beethoven. Even the youngest tried to pour dog food into the bowl. Together, they even made breakfast for their dad. It was a bit chaotic, but it was their first time learning to contribute to the household. Looking at the expectant faces of his children, eating that not-so-great breakfast, George suddenly felt a warmth in his heart. It turned out Beethoven had brought more than just trouble. He'd brought growth to the kids. They'd learned responsibility and how to love another living being. But a new danger was quietly closing in. Someone had hired a local vet to find a large dog for testing a new type of handgun. When the vet saw Beethoven come in for a shot, his eyes lit up. He immediately pulled George aside and claimed that big dogs of this breed tended to be aggressive toward humans, so families with children should never keep them. George hesitated. Back home, he told his wife sternly, if Beethoven ever showed any signs of aggression or any strange behavior, they'd have to get rid of him. No room for negotiation. That was exactly what the vet wanted. A few days later, the vet came by under the guise of a follow-up visit. When no one was looking, he secretly tore his own sleeve, slathered thick red paint on his arm, and made it look like he'd been bitten. Then he punched Beethoven, trying to provoke him into fighting back. The youngest saw this and rushed over to save Beethoven, but by the time the family arrived, all they saw a scene that was hard to explain. Though the little girl had witnessed everything, no one would take a child's word for it. After seeing the vet off, George picked up the leash. In a daze, he seemed to see Beethoven as a puppy again, though he'd never really liked Beethoven. After keeping him for so long, he still felt a twinge of reluctance, but for the children's safety, he had to painfully take Beethoven to the vet's office to be put to sleep.
I'm sorry.
Beethoven, oblivious to what was happening, was roughly shoved into a cage by the vet. He stared intently at George, his barks piercing the air, as if asking why he was being abandoned. The house fell cold as ice. No one blamed anyone, but the silence cut deeper than any argument. The couple stared at the empty dog bed, sitting there the entire day. Alice broke the silence first. She said that although Beethoven was mischievous, he loved everyone in the family, including George, who couldn't stand him. And coming back to her senses, something about the whole situation felt deeply wrong. They shouldn't have trusted a stranger's word over their own daughter's eyes. If she didn't get to the bottom of this, she'd live with guilt for the rest of her life. Just then, the three kids, who had been listening behind the door, stepped out. They wanted to go find Beethoven too, and so, the whole family rushed to the vet's office. But the vet insisted Beethoven had already been put down, refusing to let them in. The older sister didn't believe it for a second, and was ready to charge in to find Beethoven. In the scuffle, they noticed the vet's arm wasn't actually injured. They had all been deceived. But Beethoven was nowhere to be seen in the cage, because the vet flat out refused to tell them where Beethoven was. They immediately went out and called the police, but without any leads, they had no way of finding Beethoven. Just when they were at a loss, they noticed the vet leaving with a briefcase, even though it was late. Realizing something was very wrong, they quietly followed his car to a remote, abandoned factory. George told his family to wait in the car. If he didn't return in 15 minutes, they should call the police. Then he snuck inside alone. There, he found many dogs being held captive, and finally saw the vet's true colors. He was using these dogs to test illegal drugs, and tonight's subject was Beethoven. At the critical moment, George leaped down from the ceiling. In that instant, he had already come to see Beethoven his family, but the vet, knowing he'd been exposed, decided to silence him for good. Gunshots rang out. Alice, waiting outside the car, was terrified and immediately called the police. But the kids were too worried about their father and Beethoven to wait. In a panic, the little brother started the car and drove straight into the dangerous factory to help. And the moment the door swung open, it accidentally knocked over all syringes on the table, which then accidentally jabbed the vet himself. He got a taste of his own medicine and collapsed unconscious. In the end, all the criminals were arrested, and the illegal lab was shut down for good. George, who had once been so resentful of dog and so set in his ways, had completely transformed. He adopted all the dogs that had been imprisoned and abused in that factory. No longer the cold, stubborn husband and father, but the hero who stepped forward to protect his family, and the proudest role model in his children's eyes.